committee. Mr Tom Watson.
Mr Speaker, News International's decision to throw Andy Coulson to the wolves last night was an attempt to divert us from an even bigger wrong. The company was systematically and ruthlessly, without conscience, without morality, interfering with the phones of victims of murder, cruelly deceiving their families and impeding the search for justice. Glenmore Care has accepted some share of responsibility for this moral sickness, but the editor in charge of him refuses to take responsibility. Indeed, far from accepting blame, she has, amazingly, put herself in charge of the investigation of wrongdoing. The chief suspect has become the chief investigator. Can you... I will.
Thank the honourable gentleman. I've run an organisation, as many people in this House have, and when you run an organisation, things go wrong in the organisation. There are faults. It may not be your fault that something's gone wrong, but certainly it is your responsibility for that organisation, and the responsibility goes right to the top here. And Rebecca Wade Brooks is responsible for what has happened. And if she doesn't resign, then the person above her should understand that it devolves to him. It is his responsibility to sack.
I respect the sincerity and integrity of the honourable gentleman, but interventions must be briefer from now on, otherwise we're going to find it very difficult to make progress. Mr Tom Watson.
Fully agree with the honourable member, and I thank him for his brave contribution. I believe she was not only responsible for wrongdoing, but I believe she knew about it. The evidence in the paper she edited contradicts her statements that she knew nothing about unlawful behaviour. Take the paper she edited on the 14th of April 2002, which reveals that the News of the World had information from Millie Dowler's phone. In other words, they knew about the messages on the phone. They wrote, there was left a message on her voicemail after the 13-year-old vanished at 4 p.m. on March 21st. On March 27th, 6 days after Millie went missing in Walton-on-Thames, Surrey, the employment agency appears to have phoned her mobile. It was a central part of their story that they had evidence from a telephone, evidence they could only get from breaking into that phone at the time. The story of Rebecca Brooks being far from the Dowler events is simply not believable when our own newspaper talks of information they had gained from the phone. I want to inform the House of further evidence that suggests Rebecca Brooks knew about the unlawful tactics of News of the World as early as 2002, despite all her denials yesterday. Rebecca Brooks was present at a meeting with Scotland Yard when police officers pursuing a murder investigation provided her with evidence that her newspaper was interfering with the pursuit of justice. They gave her the name of another senior executive at News International, Alex Maranchek. The meeting, which included Dick Fiducio of the Metropolitan Police, told her that News of the World staff were guilty of interference and party to using unlawful means to attempt to discredit a police officer and his wife. She was told of actions by people she paid to expose and discredit David Cook and his wife Jackie Hames so that Mr. Cook would be prevented from completing an investigation into a murder. News International was paying people to interfere with police officers and were doing so on behalf of known criminals. We know now that News International, Mr. Speaker, had entered the criminal underworld. Mr. Speaker, she cannot deny being present at this meeting when the actions of people she was paying was exposed. She cannot deny now being warned that under her auspices, unlawful tactics were being used with the purpose of interfering with the pursuit of justice. She cannot deny that one of her staff, Alex Maranchek, was named and involved. She cannot deny either that she was told by the police that her own paper was using unlawful tactics, in this case to help one of her law-breaking investigators. This, in my view, shows her culpability goes beyond taking the blame as head of the organisation. It is about direct knowledge of unlawful behaviour. And was Mr Maranchek dismissed? No. He was promoted.
I'd like to thank my honourable friend for giving way. 22 years ago, my city was warning anybody that would listen at the time that scurrilous rags like the Sun newspaper were out of control when it printed blatant lies about the Hillsborough disaster. News International lied to the country in 1989, and it seems that it's still lying to the country now. Does my right honourable friend agree that the government should ensure that it doesn't take 22 years to put right this latest wrong?
I agree with my honourable friend, and as people of Liverpool no longer buy the Sun, there are thousands of people who've joined a Facebook group to boycott the News of the World today, as well as the advertisers, and I'm sure that people watching this debate will consider that. That's it. Very quickly, yes.
My honourable friend will aware there are currently people serving prison sentences in this country, none more so than Tommy Sheridan, the former MSP. That successful prosecution was based on evidence from Andrew Coulson. And now it seems as if the jury did not get all the emails pertinent to that case. If indeed that is the case, then surely the appropriate authorities should revisit this case and ask Mr Coulson whether this evidence or this information was held intentionally.
I don't have time to fully answer my honourable friend because of time restrictions. I will reveal more on this later in the week, except to say that I think the Sheridan trial was unsound and may need revisiting. Families who trusted Rebecca Brooks when she said she felt their pain, families cruelly let down by the intrusion into private grief and the callous exploitation of their sufferings. Indeed, anguished families are now tortured yet again by the knowledge that in the world of Rebecca Brooks, no one can grieve in private, no one can cry their tears without surveillance, no one can talk to their friends without their private feelings becoming public property. Mr Speaker, the whole board of News International is responsible for this company. I believe Mr James Murdoch should be suspended from office while the police now investigate what I believe is his personal authorisation to plan a cover-up of this scandal. Mr James Murdoch is the chairman. It is clear now that he personally and without board approval authorised money to be paid by his company to silence people who'd been hacked and to cover up criminal behaviour within his organisation. This is nothing short of an attempt to pervert the course of justice. Mr Speaker, there is no escape now for News International from the responsibility for systematically breaking the law, but there is now also no escape from the fact that they sought to pervert the course of justice. And Mr Speaker, I believe the police should also ask Mr James Murdoch and Rebecca Brooks whether they know of the attempted destruction of data at the HCL storage facility in Chennai, India. Mr James Murdoch and Rebecca Brooks now have to accept their culpability, and they will have to face the full force of the law. Their behaviour to the most vulnerable, their knowledge of law breaking and their failure to act, their links with the criminal underworld, their attempt to cover up law breaking and pay for people's silence, tell the world all we need to know about their character. That, Mr Speaker, they are not fit and proper persons to control any part of the media in this country.
Mr Simon Hughes.